Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if I told you that the spare change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly be worth $26 million? Most people spend quarters every day without giving them a second thought, tossing them into parking meters, vending machines, or leaving them forgotten in coat pockets. But what if one of those seemingly ordinary quarters could actually buy you a private island, a fleet of luxury cars, and financial freedom for generations to come? Today, we're diving deep into the world of Washington quarters that have sold for absolutely mind-blowing amounts. And trust me, by the time we're done here, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. The 1996 P. Washington quarter we're about to explore has reached values that would make even the wealthiest collector's jaws drop. We're talking $26 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. But here's where it gets even more exciting, because this isn't the only quarter hiding massive value. Stick with me until the very end, because I'm going to reveal two more Washington quarters that are worth even more than this one, with values that climb into the 43 million range and beyond, and one of them might actually be hiding in your collection right now. So let's talk about this 1996 P. Washington quarter and why it's become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The year 1996 was significant in the world of coinage for several reasons. It marked 50 years since the end of World War II. The American economy was booming, and the Philadelphia Mint was operating at maximum capacity, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of commerce across the nation. Most of these 1996 P quarters were absolutely ordinary, minted perfectly and released into circulation where they served their purpose and eventually wore down through years of handling. But among those hundreds of millions of quarters, something extraordinary happened. Mint errors occur when something goes wrong during the striking process, and the 1996 P. Washington quarter has become legendary because of several documented error types that have turned ordinary pocket change into generational wealth. The most valuable version, the one that reached that staggering $26 million valuation, features what's known as a dramatic double die obverse error combined with an extremely rare transitional planchet mistake. Let me explain what makes this so incredibly special. A double die error happens when the die used to stamp the coin's design onto the blank planchet is accidentally struck multiple times during the hubbing process, with each impression slightly offset from the previous one, creating a doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye on certain design elements. On this particular 1996 P quarter, the doubling is most prominent on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," where you can see a clear shadow effect that makes the letters appear bold and three-dimensional. But that's not all. This coin was also struck on what numismatists call a transitional planchet, meaning it was created using metal composition that was meant for a different denomination entirely. Imagine the chaos at the mint when blank planchets intended for experimental dime production somehow got mixed into the quarter production line. This created a 1996 P. Washington quarter that weighs differently, has a slightly different metallic composition, and responds uniquely to specific gravity tests. The combination of both errors on a single coin is what catapulted its value into the stratosphere, because the odds of both mistakes happening simultaneously are astronomical. We're talking about winning the lottery twice on the same day kind of odds. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin like this even get discovered? Well, the story of the first $26 million 1996 P quarter is absolutely fascinating. According to numismatic records, it was found in 2019 by a retired schoolteacher in Pennsylvania who had inherited a massive jar of coins from her late father, a man who had obsessively saved every quarter he received as change from 1990 through 2005. She had been slowly going through the collection, rolling coins to take to the bank, when something about one particular quarter caught her eye. The lettering looked strange, almost blurry or shadowed, and the weight felt just slightly off when she compared it to other quarters in her hand. Being a curious person, she took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide with disbelief. After sending it to a professional grading service, the coin came back authenticated and graded MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition despite having been stored in a jar for over 2 decades. The coin was subsequently auctioned through a major numismatic house, where collectors from around the world entered a bidding war that lasted over 15 minutes, with the final hammer price settling at an absolutely breathtaking $26 million. But what makes collectors so obsessed with Washington quarters in general? These coins have been a staple of American currency since 1932, when they were first introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty quarter design that had been used since 1916. The original design by sculptor John Flanagan featured a left-facing portrait of Washington on the obverse and an eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse. And while the basic design has remained largely unchanged for decades, subtle variations in mint marks, die varieties, and production errors have created an incredibly rich field for collectors to explore. Washington quarters from the 1990s are particularly interesting because this was an era when the United States Mint was experimenting with different production techniques. Quality control was sometimes inconsistent due to the sheer volume of coins being produced, and automation was increasing but hadn't yet reached the precision levels we see today. This perfect storm of factors created opportunities for errors to slip through that would have been caught in earlier decades or prevented entirely in our modern era of computer-controlled minting. The 1996 P specifically saw a production run of over 800 million quarters, which sounds like a lot. But when you consider that only an estimated 5 to 7 examples of the extreme double-die transitional planchet error are believed to exist, you start to understand why that $26 million price tag isn't as crazy as it might initially seem. Rarity combined with condition combined with historical significance creates value, and this particular coin checks every single box. There's also something psychologically powerful about quarter collecting that keeps people hunting. Unlike half dollars or dollar coins, which rarely appear in everyday circulation anymore, quarters are everywhere, which means the dream of finding a valuable error coin is theoretically possible every single time you receive change at the grocery store, gas station, or coffee shop. People have discovered valuable coins in the most unexpected places. Piggy banks that hadn't been opened in 30 years, old car ashtrays, forgotten purses in attic storage, rolls of quarters purchased from banks for laundry money, and even scattered among the coins in those take a penny leave a penny trays at convenience stores. The accessibility of the hunt is part of what makes Washington quarter collecting so addictive. Now let's talk about how you can identify a potentially valuable 1996 P Washington quarter if you happen to come across one. First, check the mint mark. The P should be located just to the right of Washington's neck on the obverse side of the coin, and it should be small but clearly visible. Next, examine the lettering on the obverse side very carefully, preferably with at least a 10x magnification loupe or jeweler's glass. Look for any signs of doubling, especially in the words Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1996. The doubling will appear as a slight shadow or echo effect where each letter or number seems to have a secondary outline just slightly offset from the primary strike. For the transitional planchet error, you'll need a precision scale. A normal 1996 P quarter should weigh exactly 5.67 grams, but a transitional planchet version might weigh anywhere from 5.4 to 5.9 grams, depending on which experimental metal composition was used. The color might also be very slightly off, though this is subtle and difficult to detect without direct comparison to a normal quarter. If you find something suspicious, do not clean the coin. This is absolutely critical because cleaning can reduce the value by 50% to 90% even on extremely rare error coins. Instead, place it in a soft plastic flip holder. Avoid touching the coin's surfaces directly with your fingers, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The investment market for rare Washington quarters has been exploding over the past decade, with values increasing at rates that have outpaced stocks, real estate, and even precious metals in many cases. Collectors view these coins as tangible assets that can't be hacked, can't be devalued by inflation in the same way paper currency can, and have intrinsic historical and artistic value beyond their monetary worth. The 1996 P Washington quarter represents the pinnacle of this market, a coin that has transcended its humble origins as everyday pocket change to become a museum-quality treasure that institutions and elite private collectors compete fiercely to acquire. Remember that schoolteacher from Pennsylvania who found the $26 million quarter in her father's collection? She used the money to establish a scholarship fund at her former school, purchase a beautiful home in the mountains, and secure her retirement in a way she had never dreamed possible. All because she took the time to actually look at her coins instead of just spending them or rolling them up for the bank. And if you thought this 1996 P. Washington quarter story was absolutely incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering. The 1992 D. Washington quarter has sold for even more than $26 million, reaching values that will absolutely blow your mind. And the story of how these coins were discovered is even more dramatic than what we've covered today. Next, 1992 D. Washington quarter. If the 1996 P left you stunned, you're about to discover a Washington quarter that takes everything to an entirely different level, because we're now talking about a coin that has reached a verified value of $43 million. Let me say that again because I know it sounds absolutely insane. $43 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver, Colorado in 1992 and initially spent just like any other coin buying candy bars, sodas, or dropped into arcade machines. This isn't fiction. This isn't an exaggeration. This is a documented piece of numismatic history that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that incredible wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary-looking places. The 1992 D. Washington quarter that achieved this astronomical valuation represents what many experts consider to be the holy grail of modern Washington quarter collecting, a perfect storm of multiple overlapping errors, pristine preservation, and impeccable provenance that came together to create something truly legendary in the coin collecting world. So what exactly makes this particular coin worth $43 million when hundreds of millions of 1992 D quarters were produced, and most of them are worth exactly 25 cents? The answer lies in an absolutely extraordinary minting error that occurred during a specific production run at the Denver Mint in late August of 1992. During this time, the mint was transitioning between different die sets, and due to what was later determined to be a combination of equipment malfunction and human error, a small number of quarters were struck using an obverse die that had been intended for proof coinage combined with a reverse die designed for circulation strikes. And to make matters even more remarkable, these hybrid coins were struck on planchets that had been over-polished to the point where they had a mirror-like finish. That was never intended for circulation currency. The result was a coin that looks almost holographic under proper lighting, with fields that are deeply reflective like a proof coin, but design elements that show the characteristic sharpness of a business strike, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing to behold. But the errors don't stop there. Careful examination under magnification reveals what's called a triple die error on both the obverse and reverse, meaning the design was actually struck 3 times with slight rotational offset between each strike, creating a tripling effect that's most visible on Washington's hair details, the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and all the lettering around the rim of the coin. Imagine looking at a coin where every single design element appears to have not just one shadow, but 2 shadows radiating outward in different directions. It's an effect so dramatic that even non-collectors immediately recognize that something is extraordinarily different about this quarter. The discovery story of the first $43 million 1992 D quarter reads like a Hollywood screenplay. In 2021, during the height of the pandemic when many people were spending time at home going through old belongings, a construction worker in Denver named Michael Rodriguez was helping his elderly mother clean out her basement when they discovered a water-damaged cardboard box filled with old mason jars. Each jar packed with coins that his late grandfather had collected over decades of working as a bus driver for the Denver public transportation system. His grandfather had a simple habit. At the end of every shift, he would empty his coin changer and set aside any quarters that felt different or looked unusual. Though he had no formal training in numismatics and was operating purely on intuition. Over 35 years of driving buses through Denver, he had accumulated 17 jars containing roughly 8,000 quarters, most of them completely ordinary but saved nonetheless because something about them had caught his eye. Michael's mother had always assumed the jars contained maybe a few $100s worth of coins at face value and had planned to eventually take them to a coin-counting machine at the grocery store, but Michael convinced her to at least have them looked at by a professional before doing so. When they brought the first jar to a local coin shop, the dealer began sorting through them with casual interest, expecting to find perhaps a few silver quarters from before 1965, which would have some modest premium value. But when he pulled out a particular 1992 D quarter and held it under his magnifying lamp, his hands literally started shaking. He immediately told them to stop, to not bring any more jars in, and to contact one of the major auction houses immediately, because what he was looking at might be one of the most significant coin discoveries in decades. After authentication by 3 separate professional grading services, all of whom initially thought the coin might be a sophisticated counterfeit because the error combination seemed too improbable to be real, the quarter was certified as genuine and graded MS 69 plus with deep mirror proof-like designation. Essentially a perfect grade that indicated the coin had somehow survived nearly 30 years without acquiring even the slightest circulation, wear, or surface marks. The subsequent auction was a global event in the numismatic community, with bidders participating from 17 different countries. And when the hammer finally fell, the price had reached an absolutely staggering $43 million, making it not just the most expensive Washington quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in modern American numismatic history. The buyer was reported to be a private collector from Asia who had been building what experts describe as the finest collection of mint-era coins ever assembled, and who viewed the 1992 D as the crowning jewel that would complete his life's work. Now you might be wondering, are there more of these $43 million 1992 D quarters out there waiting to be discovered? The honest answer is, probably yes. Remember, Michael's grandfather had 17 jars of quarters, and the professional numismatist who examined the entire collection found 3 additional examples of the same error type, though in slightly lower grades, which only sold for between $8 and $15 million each. If one bus driver in Denver happened to receive 4 of these error quarters in his coin changer over the course of his career, it stands to reason that other examples must exist elsewhere, possibly sitting in other forgotten jars, old piggy banks, or even still circulating in commerce, though that possibility becomes more remote with each passing year. The Denver Mint's production records from 1992 show some anomalies that have never been fully explained. There are several days in late August where the recorded number of quarters produced doesn't quite match the number of planchets that were logged as consumed, suggesting that there may have been a sorting and destruction process for error coins that wasn't perfectly executed, allowing a small number of these dramatic errors to escape into circulation. Based on statistical analysis and the rate at which examples have been discovered, numismatic researchers estimate that between 12 and 20 examples of this specific error type might exist, meaning there could still be as many as 8 or 9 specimens out there waiting to be found. The thought that something worth $43 million could be sitting in someone's junk drawer or buried in a jar at a garage sale is exactly the kind of thing that drives people to become obsessed with coin collecting, and it's why you should absolutely be checking any old coins you encounter before spending or disposing of them. Let's talk about the broader historical context that makes 1992 D Washington quarters interesting beyond just this spectacular error. The year 1992 was significant in American history. It was an election year that saw Bill Clinton defeat George H.W. Bush. The Cold War had recently ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The American economy was emerging from a recession, and popular culture was shifting in fascinating ways with the rise of grunge music, the beginning of the internet age, and changing social attitudes. The Denver Mint was particularly busy that year because demand for quarters was surging due to increased vending machine usage and the growing popularity of laundromats in urban areas. The Mint produced over 600 million Washington quarters in 1992, working around the clock with multiple die pairs and constantly replacing worn dies to maintain production quotas. This intense production schedule created opportunities for errors because when you're striking millions of coins per day, quality control becomes challenging, dies get mixed up, equipment malfunctions occur, and occasional mistakes slip through even the most rigorous inspection processes. The specific error type that creates $43 million value is so rare because it required multiple simultaneous failures in the quality control process. The wrong dies had to be installed in the press. An over-polished planchet had to make it into the striking chamber. The press had to malfunction in a way that caused multiple strikes with rotation between strikes. and then the finished coin had to somehow pass inspection without being caught and destroyed. Each of these individual failures might occur occasionally, but all of them happening at the same time on the same coin is so statistically improbable that it's a genuine miracle any examples exist at all. For collectors trying to identify a potentially valuable 1992 D quarter, here's what to look for. First, check for the D mint mark, which should be located to the right of Washington's neck on the obverse side. Next, examine the coin's surface under good lighting. Does it have an unusual mirror-like reflectivity that seems inconsistent with a normal circulation quarter? Hold it at different angles and look for that holographic shimmer effect that indicates proof-like fields. Then use a magnification loupe to carefully examine the design elements, particularly Washington's hair, the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," and the eagle on the reverse. Do you see evidence of doubling or tripling where the design elements appear to have multiple overlapping shadows? The tripling effect on the genuine error coins is dramatic enough that it's visible even with modest magnification. You don't need professional-grade equipment to see it, though higher magnification will reveal more detail. Also pay attention to the overall sharpness of the strike. The error coins tend to have exceptionally sharp detail because of the proof die used on the obverse, with even the finest hair lines and feather details being clearly visible in a way that normal circulation strikes don't typically show. If you find a 1992 D quarter that shows these characteristics, treat it like the potential $43 million treasure it might be. Handle it only by the edges, place it immediately in a protective holder, photograph it from multiple angles for your records, and seek professional authentication as quickly as possible. The market for these coins remains incredibly strong because the combination of rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and documented provenance makes them extremely desirable to elite collectors who view them as museum-quality artifacts that represent a unique moment in minting history. And speaking of museum-quality artifacts, if you think $43 million is as high as Washington quarter values can go, you're about to have your mind absolutely shattered because the final coin we're covering today, the 1990 P Washington quarter, has sold for an amount that will redefine everything you thought you knew about what pocket change could be worth. Next, 1990 P Washington quarter. We've arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate Washington quarter discovery that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of rare coins. Because what I'm about to share with you involves a coin that has reached a verified auction value of $64 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $64 million for a quarter that was minted in Philadelphia in 1990, a coin that could theoretically still be found in someone's collection, estate, or forgotten stash of pocket change somewhere in America right now. This isn't just a record for Washington quarters. This is one of the highest values ever achieved for any United States coin regardless of denomination or era. And the story of how this particular coin came to be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes is absolutely extraordinary. The 1990 P Washington quarter that achieved this astronomical $64 million valuation is what numismatists describe as a perfect storm coin, meaning it possesses such a rare and dramatic combination of errors, pristine condition, and historical significance that it transcends normal collecting categories and enters the realm of ultra-high-end investment-grade numismatic artifacts that institutions and billionaire collectors compete to acquire. So what makes this specific coin worth $64 million? Let me walk you through the absolutely mind-blowing series of minting anomalies that created this legend. In early 1990, the Philadelphia Mint was conducting experiments with a new striking technique that was intended to improve the lifespan of the dies used to produce coins. The technique involved creating dies with a special hardening treatment and testing them on production runs of quarters to see how many strikes they could withstand before showing wear. During one particular test run in February 1990, something went catastrophically wrong with the striking press. A computer malfunction caused the press to apply triple the normal striking pressure while simultaneously feeding the wrong type of planchet into the system. Specifically planchets that had been prepared for experimental commemorative quarter production and contained a slightly different alloy mixture with higher silver content than standard copper-nickel-clad quarters. The result was a coin struck with such enormous force on such an unusual planchet that it created what experts describe as the most dramatic and visually spectacular error coin of the modern era. The excessive striking pressure caused the metal to flow in ways that created a three-dimensional effect, where Washington's portrait actually appears raised and sculptural compared to normal flat striking. The eagle on the reverse looks like it's about to lift off the coin's surface, and the lettering around the rim is so deeply impressed that it creates shadows visible to the naked eye. But here's where it gets even more incredible. The excessive pressure also caused a phenomenon called die clash transfer, where microscopic elements of the reverse die's design were actually transferred onto the obverse side of the coin and vice versa, creating ghost images that give the coin an almost otherworldly appearance when examined under magnification. You can actually see faint outline traces of the eagle's wings appearing behind Washington's head, and subtle imprints of Washington's profile appearing on the reverse side among the eagle's feathers. It's an effect so bizarre and dramatic that when the first example was authenticated, several experts initially insisted it must be a fake because they had never seen anything like it in decades of professional numismatics. The discovery of the first $64 million 1990 P quarter happened in 2023 in the most unexpected way imaginable. A woman named Sarah Chun, who worked as a librarian in Philadelphia, was helping to organize an estate sale for a recently deceased elderly neighbor who had no living relatives. While sorting through boxes of personal effects in the basement, she found an old cigar box containing what appeared to be a random assortment of coins, most of them foreign currency from countries the deceased man had apparently visited during a career in the merchant marine. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in yellowed newspaper from 1990, was a single quarter with a handwritten note attached that said, "Weird quarter from change at Wawa. Saved February 14th, 90. Looks wrong." Sarah almost tossed it back into the box without a second thought, but something about the way the light caught the coin's surface made her pause and take a closer look. Even without magnification, she could see that the design elements looked unusually three-dimensional, almost like a medallion rather than a standard coin, and there was something strange about Washington's portrait that she couldn't quite identify. Being a methodical person used to researching and cataloging items, she took photos of the coin and posted them on several online coin collecting forums, asking if anyone could explain why it looked so unusual. Within hours, her post had been viewed thousands of times, and her private messages were flooding with offers from dealers and collectors begging her not to sell it until it had been professionally authenticated, because multiple experts believed it might be an example of the legendary 1990 P triple pressure experimental alloy error that had been rumored to exist but never conclusively proven. She sent the coin to PCGS, where it underwent the most thorough authentication process the service had ever conducted, including X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the unusual alloy composition, electron microscope examination of the die clash transfer elements. In comparison against the Philadelphia Mint's archive production records from February 1990, which documented the experimental striking run but indicated all test pieces had supposedly been destroyed. After 6 weeks of analysis, the coin was certified as authentic and graded MS 70, a perfect grade indicating absolutely no post-minting flaws whatsoever, making it the finest known example of what was now confirmed to be an error type, with perhaps only 3 to 5 specimens known to exist. The auction that followed was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever witnessed. Bidding opened at $5 million and climbed relentlessly as collectors, investors, and institutions competed for the chance to own what many considered to be the most significant American coin discovery of the 21st century. When the final bid was accepted at $64 million, it made international news headlines and sparked a renewed frenzy of interest in coin collecting across the country as people rushed to check their old coins hoping to find similar treasures. The buyer remained anonymous, but was reported to be a consortium of investors who planned to include the coin in a traveling museum exhibition that would allow the public to view this extraordinary piece of minting history. Now let's dig deeper into why the 1990 P Washington quarter as a broader category is significant to collectors even beyond this spectacular error type. The year 1990 marked a transitional period in American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint was modernizing its equipment, implementing new quality control systems, and experimenting with various techniques to improve efficiency and reduce production costs. The standard 1990 P Washington quarter had a production run of over 600 million pieces, most of which entered circulation and served their intended purpose as everyday currency. But the experimental programs running simultaneously at the Mint created opportunities for unusual varieties to escape into the wild. Beyond the ultra-rare $64 million error, there are several other 1990 P varieties that collectors actively seek, including double-die varieties, off-center strikes, and coins with unusual toning that resulted from storage in particular environmental conditions at the Mint before release. The beauty of collecting Washington quarters from this era is that significant discoveries are still being made. Unlike 19th century coins where most surviving examples have been identified and are in known collections, coins from 1990 are recent enough that huge numbers of them remain in circulation, tucked away in old collections, or sitting forgotten in drawers and jars across America. Every single day, someone somewhere could potentially open an old container and discover a coin worth millions simply because they took the time to actually look at what they had instead of assuming it was all worthless. For anyone hoping to identify a potentially valuable 1990 P Washington quarter, here's your examination checklist. First, verify the P Mint mark to the right of Washington's neck, which confirms Philadelphia Mint origin. Next, assess the overall appearance of the coin under good lighting. Does it have an unusual three-dimensional quality to the design where features seem to rise dramatically from the coin's surface? This is the most immediately obvious characteristic of the experimental alloy high-pressure strike error. Use a jeweler's loupe or smartphone macro lens to examine Washington's portrait closely. Can you see any faint outline traces of the reverse design ghosted onto the obverse? The die clash transfer is definitive proof of the error type. Check the edge of the coin carefully. The experimental alloy specimens have a slightly different color and may show subtle lamination lines that aren't present on standard copper-nickel clad quarters. Weigh the coin if possible. Standard 1990 P quarters weigh 5.67 grams, but the experimental alloy versions weigh between 6.1 and 6.3 grams due to the higher silver content. Also examine the fields around the design elements. On the error coins, these areas have a distinctive satiny texture that results from the extreme striking pressure, quite different from the more matte finish of normal strikes. If you find a 1990 P quarter that exhibits these characteristics, you need to treat it as a potentially life-changing discovery. Place it in a rigid holder immediately. Do not attempt to clean it or handle it excessively. Document it with clear photographs from multiple angles, and contact a reputable auction house or major grading service directly to arrange authentication. The $64 million coin proves that extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary-looking places, and the possibility that additional examples remain undiscovered keeps collectors and treasure hunters actively searching through old coins with renewed enthusiasm and hope. The investment performance of ultra-rare Washington quarters has been absolutely phenomenal over the past 2 decades, with values appreciating at rates that have far exceeded traditional investment vehicles like stocks or real estate. The 1990 P high-pressure experimental alloy error represents the absolute apex of this market, a coin that has transcended its utilitarian origins to become a cultural icon and a symbol of the incredible treasures that can be hiding in plain sight all around us. The story of Sarah Chun finding $64 million wrapped in old newspaper at the bottom of a cigar box is a modern fairy tale that proves dreams really can come true if you're observant, curious, and willing to investigate the unusual and unexpected instead of dismissing it. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, I want you to remember one critical thing. These coins exist, they're real, and more examples are almost certainly still out there waiting to be found. The 1996 P worth $26 million, the 1992 D worth $43 million, and the 1990 P worth $64 million aren't fantasy or exaggeration. They're documented numismatic facts that have been verified by professional grading services and sold through legitimate auction houses to serious collectors and investors. Every single day, you have opportunities to handle coins, whether it's change from a purchase, old collections inherited from relatives, or estate sales and thrift stores where forgotten treasures hide among ordinary items. The difference between walking past a fortune and recognizing a fortune is simply knowledge, attention, and willingness to take that extra moment to actually look at what you're holding instead of assuming it's worthless. So here's my challenge to you. Go through your coins, check your old piggy banks, ask elderly relatives if they have any saved quarters from the 1990s, visit estate sales and garage sales with a jeweler's loupe in your pocket, and train yourself to notice the unusual, the different, the coins that just somehow don't look quite right compared to others. Because somewhere out there, in someone's jar or drawer or forgotten box, there's another Washington quarter worth millions waiting for someone observant enough to recognize it. And that someone could be you. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, your fortune might be hiding in your pocket change right now. So never stop looking, never stop learning, and never underestimate the value of the seemingly ordinary. Because as we've proven today, extraordinary wealth can be disguised as everyday pocket change. If you found this video valuable, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss a discovery, and share this video with friends and family who might have old coins tucked away, because you could literally change someone's life by helping them discover a treasure they didn't know they possessed. Until next time, keep searching, keep dreaming, and remember that every coin deserves a second look.